Resident Evil Village, the only game in the series that features a 9'6" vampire lady, has a host of creepy creatures ready to kill protagonist Ethan Winters. We're breaking down everything you need to know about every monster in Resident Evil Village, ranked from best to worst. Look, every game has to have its cannon fodder, the basic and familiar enemy that's easy to defeat and annoying to repeatedly encounter throughout the game. Lycans are that enemy for Resident Evil Village. They're one of the first monsters that players encounter in the game, and they appeared early in promotional material. That being said, Lycans aren't that scary, all things considered. Well, except for… They appear as partially transformed men, mostly shirtless, with grey skin and animalistic features. Lycans growl, slash, and snarl at Ethan, but don't seem to do much damage. Ethan can withstand a good number of Lycan attacks before needing to use healing supplies. Even though Lycans aren't incredibly frightening, and even though they are weak in comparison to other monsters in Resident Evil 8, the sheer number of Lycans often proves intimidating for poor Ethan.
Come here.
Although they aren't exactly vampires, Moroaica have a lot in common with their pointy-toothed cousins. For one thing, Moroaica have shriveled, pale bodies that resemble corpses. In fact, many of them seem to be corpses, lying on the ground motionless until triggered to life by Ethan's proximity. After they're up though, they're not much of an issue to deal with. A few well-timed handgun blasts or one particularly close shotgun shot seems to be all that's needed to take down a Moroaica. Sometimes it's even possible to line them up in a row and take down several at a time. Moroaica most likely came from Moroi, a type of vampire. Moroi are just one type of revenant from Romanian folklore. Tradition seems to indicate that Moroi are the earthbound souls of unbaptized babies, but the Moroaica from Resident Evil Village certainly don't appear to be babies at all. Instead, they're fully formed horrors, ready to take a bite out of Ethan. Haulers look a bit like Moroaica, except modified with cybernetic gear. They wear high-tech visors around their heads, giving them a look reminiscent of Geordi LaForge from Star Trek The Next Generation. There's nothing Lava Burton-esque about these monsters though. They're just as annoying as a Moroaica, but there are far fewer of them. Haulers have a bit more stamina than other monsters that appear earlier in Resident Evil Village, making them more of a pain to deal with and harder to take down in a fight. Even so, Haulers don't pose much of a threat in the long run, and Ethan can easily take them down, despite their increased health. Unlike the Moroaica, Haulers seem to have a more obvious and troubled backstory. Ethan encounters them in Heisenberg's lab, and they also appear to be the result of years of experimentation. Their mechanical attachments were hardly added consensually, which makes Haulers a sad case. They didn't ask to be made into horrifying creatures, and yet they must bite. Samcas, like Haulers, also resemble Moroaica in many ways. However, they also have wings, can fly, and suck out Ethan's life with strange slippery tongues reminiscent of another iconic Resident Evil monster. You know the one. All in all, the Samcas are just the kind of casual friends one meets in Lady Dimitrescu's castle. From a distance, they resemble gargoyles, their large, bat-like wings flapping out behind them. Once you get closer, it appears they also have those nasty-looking tongues. Each Samcas has a remnant of a shackle around one of its legs. It's difficult to say if the Samcas are experiments that were imprisoned after their creation, or if the shackles are related to some unknown darker tale. Just when players think they've mastered Lycans, armored Lycans show up. Sure, underneath all the gear, these Lycans are the same as their weaker counterparts, but those few layers of protection really do make a difference. Armored Lycans wear scrap metal and accentuate their already fearsome claws with long metal strips, effectively giving them talons that rival Lady Dimitrescu herself. One Resident Evil Village player said it's best to avoid armored Lycans altogether, and explained that they managed to lure one armored Lycan away from its post, revealing that it was guarding pretty basic crafting materials, like a chicken. In other words, the treasures that the armored Lycans protect aren't anything worth wasting ammo over. Chickens are plentiful, and the long game of attracting an armored Lycan out just to use countless bullets to defeat them feels fruitless in the end. Still, armored Lycans seem awfully intimidating when players first meet them, making them more memorable than the less buff werewolves that populate other areas in Village. Who wouldn't be a little afraid of a decked-out Lycan with long claws and an iron will? Varcolacs are also related to werewolf lore, but as noted by the conversation, these creatures follow more traditional depictions of the bloodthirsty creatures, and are more beast than man. The Varcolac is big, walks on all fours, and has shaggy hair all over its body. It also has a gaping, snarling mouth, ready to take a chomp out of Ethan. Like many creatures in Village, Varcolacs also play a role in traditional Romanian folklore. In folkloric texts, Varcolacs are spirits trapped within the bodies of dogs, which makes sense considering their wolf-like appearance. However, all ties to legitimate mythology end with the Varcolac's appearance. The beast has one specific purpose within Village: to scare the daylights out of players. Treasure giants are completely optional bosses that guard, well, treasure. They're tall with blunt faces and horrible haircuts. Even though these brutes look like any typical bridge troll, they're extremely hard to kill. If you plan to face one, bring lots of ammo, you'll need it. Killing a treasure giant grants players a giant crystal axe, which can be traded to the Duke for a tidy sum of money. In replays, some players have said the money isn't worth it though, and suggest finessing one's way around the treasure giant in order to steal the goods and make a run for it. Whether one chooses to fight the optional treasure giants in Resident Evil Village or not, their design and sheer stamina make them a couple of the more memorable lesser monsters in the game. Einsavai and Jet are the three most common forms of Soldat, which translates to soldier. All three of them feature some variation of a drill arm, glowing red targets on their chests or backs, and, as always, the urge to kill Ethan Winters. Technically, Einsavai and Jet are all distinct, but they're more or less the same type of enemy, just in slightly different forms. While the Einz Soldat has a glowing red target on its chest, which players must shoot in order to down it, the Savai and Jet Soldats have a much more complex pattern of targets to blast. While the three variants aren't that fast, their approach still feels menacing. They are, like so many things in Heisenberg's factory, the result of experiment in making the perfect super soldier. Each Soldat has a Cardo parasite in its chest in lieu of a heart, and Ethan often earns a crystal mechanical heart as a prize for his efforts in defeating one of them, which can be sold to the Duke. A Soldat Panzer, or tank soldier in German, on the other hand, is more heavily armored than its numbered siblings. Players have to use a lot of ammo to take down a single Soldat Panzer, and even then it's not a guarantee that the metal beast won't claim Ethan's life in the process. These creatures are faster than their Einsavai and Jet counterparts, making them difficult to outrun. Lady Dimitres's daughters, Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra, look normal enough upon first inspection, if a little bloody. Soon players realize that they're made up of flies that buzz uncontrollably whenever they're near. Oh, and they're also hungry for blood.
Man blood.
An interview with the director and art director of Resident Evil Village revealed that the three sisters' looks, like that of Lady Dimitrescu herself, are based on fashion designs from the 1960s. Though their clothes may be black and brooding, each dress actually has an intricate embroidered floral design. Each daughter has a different look, yet they fit cohesively together. Overall, Lady Dimitrescu's daughters don't pose much of a threat, accounting for their mid-tier ranking in terms of monsters. A blast of cold air and a few well-placed bullets is all it takes to defeat them. Tragically, actress Jeanette Mouse, who played sister Cassandra Dimitrescu in Village, passed away before the game was released. Her excellent voice acting skills live on through her work as one of Lady Dimitrescu's intimidating daughters. Urias, a giant Lycan with a mean hammer, appears in the very first fight of Resident Evil 8, when Ethan first arrives in the titular village. However, players don't actually have to defeat him until later in the game, when they're working their way through Heisenberg's stronghold. Urias' sudden appearance always invokes chaos and panic, considering his large frame occupies most of the player's screens. There are a few things his hammer can't reach. There's nothing particularly abnormal about Urias' boss fight in the stronghold. It's a straightforward, shoot him until he's dead sort of battle, and Resident Evil Village gives players a lot of ammo to do so in the arena where they face Urias. However, the fight still drains precious resources that aren't easily recovered, which immediately puts players on edge. Then there's Urias' big brother, Urias Stranger, who attacks towards the end of the game in an amped-up mini-boss battle. This time, players get to battle one of these hulking beasts as fan favorite Chris Redfield, who steps in to save the day with his crew of special forces and seemingly limitless ammo. Compared to the battle against Urias, this is a much more claustrophobic encounter, and players must expertly dodge out of the way in order to avoid being killed. Let's get one thing out of the way: Sturm is not smart. A document players find in Heisenberg's factory before facing Sturm indicates that the propeller-headed drone cut his own arms off after sticking them too close to his fan blade head. Even though Sturm isn't going to win any spelling bees or quiz bowls anytime soon, he's still a worthwhile enemy. Aside from his intimidating design, Sturm is nerve-wracking because he doesn't take damage easily. Players must shoot a glowing red disc on his back in order to defeat the burly creature. Luckily, Sturm is easy to trick. He loves to run into walls and get stuck. In German, Sturm means storm, a nod to Sturm's unpredictable nature. Throughout the factory level, Sturm chases Ethan. Players can hear his propeller head whirring in the distance, adding to the overall atmosphere of fear that permeates the dark mechanical setting. When Sturm gives chase, there's little left to do but run. Not every monster wants to be horrific. Poor Salvatore Moreau was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and fell victim to a series of experiments that left him deformed, monstrous, and desperate for a mother's love. He's the most sympathetic lord in Resident Evil Village, constantly vying for Mother Miranda's attention even as Ethan kills him. Moreau has a clinic where he performs experiments on villagers, infecting them with the parasitic Cadeau and often killing them in the process. Those who didn't die turn into Lycans, or worse. Moreau's clinic establishes him as part mad scientist, part ignorant fool, making him one of the more interesting monsters in the game. The boss battle with Moreau is unconventional, requiring players to be light on their feet and clever, relying on tricks rather than firepower. Moreau provides a welcome break from the heavy firepower featured in much of Resident Evil Village.
Don't leave. I can't let you.
Resident Evil 8 doesn't reveal much about Donna Beneviento, one of the 4 lords working for Mother Miranda. In fact, she only has one line of dialogue, the one you just heard. Instead of putting Beneviento at the forefront of her own story, players interact with her through a puppet named Angie, a ball-jointed doll wearing a wedding dress and veil.
Everything would be better if Rose wasn't born.
Monster.
Beneviento herself wears all black, her face shrouded by a dark covering. Donna Beneviento's home, which Ethan must journey through in order to save his daughter, is the setting for one of the more interesting encounters in the game. Instead of fighting Donna Beneviento and Angie, Ethan must outsmart them in a deadly game of hide and seek.
Before my friends murder you!
A note players can find in Mother Miranda's lab indicates that Donna Beneviento developed severe mental illness from being infected with a Cadeau. It's not clear what that mental illness was, but players quickly discover that Donna Beneviento's true talents lie in emotional manipulation and the alteration of perception. In other words, her entire home will mess with players' heads, not their trigger fingers. A name like Baby shouldn't accompany one of the most terrifying monsters of Resident Evil Village, and yet it does. Players encounter the hallucinatory monster dubbed simply Baby in Donna Beneviento's home, where it proceeds to chase him around the building and threatens to take Ethan into its gaping maw. Baby is quite literally a massive baby, although in a fetus-like state. It crawls down hallways with its gargantuan mouth opened wide, giggling and crying all the while. Ethan can only run from Baby, since Donna Beneviento took his weapons away upon entering her home. Players found Baby very unsettling. One gamer posted a meme indicating that saving Rose isn't worth encountering Baby or going into the Beneviento mansion at all. Another Redditor responded that, quote, "This place needs a healthy dose of gasoline and napalm," indicating Ethan might have been better off just blowing up the building in the first place. Mother Miranda is a vague presence for most of Resident Evil Village, someone that characters often discuss but never seem to engage with directly. Aside from 1 or 2 scenes early in the game, Mother Miranda doesn't have a physical presence in Village until the final act. Of course, she's always there in spirit, infecting the lore of the world and driving Ethan mad with her wild schemes.
Don't worry. Your death will come quick. You will join the Megamycetes records.
Because Mother Miranda is so interconnected with the plot of Village, it's impossible to give her a low ranking among the game's monsters. She has solid character motivations and a dramatic, beautiful character design. Oh, and she's absolutely willing to burn down the village in order to see her dreams realized. Part of what makes Miranda so memorable is her unwavering desire to bring her daughter back to life, and her determination to see that dream realized no matter what.
Oh, be careful what you wish for, Ethan Winters.
Lady Dimitrescu is absolutely the face of Resident Evil Village. Even though she appears early in the game and only for a brief time, Lady D has won players' hearts with her character design, height, and interesting origins. In Castle Dimitrescu, the lady is queen. She chases Ethan throughout its many halls, seeking to put an end to the man who killed her 3 daughters. Eventually, Lady Dimitrescu transforms into a horrific, monstrous being, ready for one last fight. Ethan must shoot at Lady Dimitrescu accurately in order to win the battle, all while managing to stay atop a tower of her lovely castle. Even though Lady Dimitrescu isn't the most imposing or frightening monster in Resident Evil Village, she's easily one of the most iconic. Fans won't soon forget her style, her imposing nature, and her tall frame. Karl Heisenberg is the last of the 4 lords Ethan must face, and his boss fight is, hands down, the most memorable moment in the entirety of Resident Evil Village. From the moment Heisenberg is introduced, players are drawn in by his charisma, mysteriousness, and let's be real here, his sweet frickin' sunglasses.
Mother Miranda is gonna love you.
After a chaotic run-in with Heisenberg early in the game, Ethan eventually returns to Heisenberg's factory to defeat him once and for all. In the end, Ethan has to use a cannon attached to a cart to defeat Heisenberg, who has used magnetic powers to bolster himself with metal. It's pretty damn disgusting, we're not gonna lie.
Don't come back here!
Ethan's experiences with Heisenberg make for some of the coolest moments in Resident Evil Village, cementing his spot as the best monster in the game. Without Heisenberg, players wouldn't have as much insight into the other characters as they do, or get to experience the awesome excitement of blasting away at a metal behemoth with a small tank. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more SVG videos about your favorite things are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.